Welcome to Knicks Home Court with your host, Greg Armstrong. I guess Carmelo is the leader. Super teams are bad for the NBA. Adam Silver. Super teams are not so bad for the NBA. Adam Silver. Can Kristaps Porzingis make the All-Star team this upcoming season? Coming up on Knicks Home Court. Music brought to you by bensound.com. Okay, let's get into this Knick news. Phil Jackson does it again. He takes to Twitter and confuses them. I don't see why. But let me read his quote. Let me read his tweet. Here's what. We have brought change to the Knicks team. The real dimension of change is how much the players want to unite in this change. Now, that one there, I actually, he wrote what, but I understand he means want. Yeah, so, it's funny when Phil makes these, he comes out and says things, they like to, I feel like sometimes I feel like there's a lot of hate against Phil. I know that sounds crazy, and people say, no, I'm saying he's like one of the most successful coaches in history, basketball minds in history of sports, basically, not just basketball. He's one of the brilliant minds, but I remember when he was coaching, people would say, he's not that great a coach. He has the greatest players. And I always say, show me a great coach that doesn't have great players, and I'll concede that argument. But anyway, what I believe he's trying to say is, how much do the players want to unite in this change? You're brought together. How much do you want it, basically? I think that's what he's saying, in essence, in so many words. And let's read his next tweet. It's not about bonding and being friends. It's about joining in the effort and playing hard on every effort. I think that's self-explanatory. I don't think I need to get into that one. Even though it's a little unrealistic, Phil, players don't play hard every effort, but I understand what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense. And people tend to get confused by Phil, and I don't see the confusion. I think he says a lot of poignant stuff, and I think if you don't understand, take your time and dissect it. I don't know. Anyway, I want to move on. Let's move on. The Knicks signed Maurice Endor, the 6'9", 200-pound power forward / center. And, it's a good deal. It's good to have him. It's good to have roster depth. What I really like, though, is people say that the Knicks have a win-now team, but they have a bench full of young guys. And they have a starting team full of young vets. Melo's the oldest vet, but the young vets. And what's good about the young vets is and players who are used to winning is that you have the young players on the bench. And I realized, like Phil had said, he wanted to build a team according to the Spurs model. And that makes a lot of sense because that's what the Spurs do. When you have a winning situation and you have young players on the bench learning and seeing how players are dealing with adversity and they continue to win, you put them into it, they're going to make winning plays. They're going to do good things. They're going to develop in a winning environment, which is healthy. It's really healthy for young players. The Knicks re-signed Sasha Vujacic. Yes, they re-signed Sasha. I don't mind this familiarity. I can never say that word. I don't mind. I think it's a good signing because, he may hit a few threes. We know he ain't afraid to shoot them. He's a friend of Kristaps Porzingis. He's a good guy, and if you look up and down this Knicks roster, they have a team full of good guys with good character and used to winning, by the way, as far as the veterans. So, there's no knuckleheads on the team. There's no J.R. Smiths on the team tying shoestrings when you're in the midst of a losing streak or whatever. There's none of that. Shumpert, to me, he wasn't really a problem. He just always thought he was better. He still thinks he's better than what he is. But anyway, I'm not going to rag on. It's just that's the fact of life for him. All right. Now, Mike D'Antoni, for some reason, felt like it was I don't know. I guess somebody asked him a question about the Knicks. They always got to ask about the Knicks. Remember, or I didn't even get into it, but the Knicks are the number one franchise according to Forbes in the NBA. They're number 7 in the world. Now, that doesn't mean that they're a great franchise, actually. It just means they're a money-generating franchise, And there's 8 million people here. And most of those, if they like basketball, they're Knicks fans. Not most of 8 million, but most of the people in New York are Knicks fans. Brooklyn's trying to make a dent. They haven't made a scratch yet, but they're trying. But, he talked about Jeremy Lin, and he said, there was some resistance, and he was there, and I'm like, listen, I don't even have the energy. If you hear how I'm talking about D'Antoni, I don't have the energy to talk about this man. This man has been given chance after chance after chance after chance. He did well in Phoenix, and I'm not going to say he did well because of the players, because every coach does well because of the players. But he's terrible with handling personalities. He has one way to play. It seems, he doesn't really adjust for his talent. And some people will say the same thing about Phil Jackson, and that might be true. But when you have 11 rings, I understand the stubbornness. I'm sorry. When one way is very successful, I can understand someone being stubborn, as opposed to one way. Yeah, he sort of revolutionized the NBA as far as D'Antoni with the offenses and the pick and rolls and the three-point shot, but he never won. Himself never won. And he's not, like I said, he's not an easy guy to get along with. And I defended him. Plenty of times. I just feel like he went to L.A., did the same thing. He had a much better team. He did nothing good with that team. So anyway, let's move on. I want to move on to Carmelo Anthony. I'm very proud of the young man. It was Carmelo, for y'all who were under a rock and didn't hear, in all the recent events that's been going on. Carmelo put out an Instagram post, which I read in the last Knicks Home Court podcast. I'm not going to read that again, but so it was Chris Paul, Wade, LeBron, and of course Carmelo. They stood up there in the ESPYs, which I didn't watch. I just saw that clip. And he gave a passioned plea. I would call it a passioned plea. And it was nice. I like it. We've been having discussions lately. I think that the good thing about this speech, I wouldn't say the good thing. Let me not use those words. When the cops got killed, it spurred the conversation. I don't have any opinion. I'm just saying once the conversation was starting, but once the cops got killed and the violence escalated, the conversation, I think the tide and the time was right for him to make this speech where all people can listen and accept it. Had the cops not been shot, it would have felt like he's just on one side. So this is why, and also like you said, Chris Paul is related to a cop. I think he said he was a nephew of a cop. So that's important, So, these guys are young. They just want the violence to stop. And the thing about Carmelo, if you notice, he's always been about his roots, going back to Puerto Rico, trying to have a soccer team there. Some people say it's about money. Yeah, but he could do money. People kill me with that. He could do that in a lot of different places. He goes back to his block in Baltimore. A lot of people be like, why you come back here? I'm sure he got a security team behind the scenes. But either way, he comes back to where he's from. And And maybe that's why it touches him in such a way, because he stays connected. When you're not connected to the situation, be it if you're from the place or not from the place, you're going to have a different perspective. You're just going to rationalize everything. But anyway, I'm very proud that Carmelo stood up, and I've heard that he was a catalyst for this. And, I wonder how those conversations went. But anyway, so, I really can say that, I was proud of Melo. It's a good moment. And I think that if the Knicks win some games this year, it's going to be reflected on very positively for him. And so that's our Knicks news for this week. We're going to get into some NBA news. Now, when I do the NBA news, I won't cover the entire NBA. This podcast is not long. It's a Knicks home court podcast, so I won't cover the whole NBA. I'll just cover some of it, or whatever I felt to be intriguing, I will bring that up. Other than that, I'm not covering the entire NBA. And another thing I noticed, you probably realize, I'm not going to mention salaries right now when we talk about the low end of the free agents. I'm not going to, only the bigger ones. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about how much Maurice Indoor makes and he's going to be like the 13th man or something, or the 14th man. I'm not going to do that. Him and Sasha, Sasha got the veteran minimum. I'm not going to waste my time in that, really. I don't really care what they make. I care about how they fit on the court. Now, I do care, because some people say, oh, you have a salary cap, so you got to care. They're under the cap. Or they were under the cap. Most of their team, they're fine. Next year, we'll worry about that all over again. So let's get into the NBA news. The Brooklyn Nets signed Anthony Bennett, former number 1 pick, and so far in his career, he's been a serious bust. I mean, I was going to say something corny. I'll just say it now. I'll let you know it's corny. I was going to say what is that? I was going to say he's been a bust like Dolly Parton. Like Dolly Parton's did this. But that was corny. So I'm a little tired. Look, this podcast business, I got to admit, is not an easy thing. I'm just starting out. This is my 4th podcast. I'm still working on the website, so I've been putting everything up on SoundCloud, and whoever listens, I'm glad. If I only got 1 listener, I'm happy for that. I'll post it also on Facebook, a Facebook page I'm coming up with. I'm still working on that too. I'm also posting it on YouTube under Knicks Home Court. You can find it in Knicks Home Court. Please subscribe. All right. So Anthony Bennett signed with the Nets. They also signed Randy Foye. I'm gonna tell you about this. I really feel like the Nets have no draft picks this year, and I think they don't have any draft picks next year. I think they traded away both years. I'm not really sure. I'm not even going to get all into that. All I know is that this year they don't have draft picks, right? And I don't know what they did. They tried to sign Tyler Johnson and Allen Crabbe, and I am thankful that the other teams matched, because they got some overpriced players, and it's gonna cause a problem on those teams. But they might be more valuable to those teams than it would be the Nets. I think the Nets should have never gone after restricted free agents. I don't think that was a smart move. I think that you got Brook Lopez, who's basically a borderline all-star. You got to build around him. There was enough lower-end pieces. You could have overpaid. You could have done player options on players who can really play. Veterans, young vets, and things like that. But, they're going to lose. They're going to lose a lot of games this year. Brook Lopez, who already has an iffy foot, maybe they should trade Brook. And I never believe in trading star players or your best player. But I think they probably should at least see what's out there, because if you're going to put garbage around this young man and waste his prime, you might as well trade him. That's why I never felt that the Knicks were going to rebuild, because they kept Carmelo. It's like once they kept Carmelo, they were never rebuilding. They retooled. Anyway. I want to talk about, so Adam Silver came out against super teams. I think it felt like the beginning of the week, and by the end of the week, he was like, super teams are not that bad. Basically, as far as the problem with super teams in the NBA, this is some bullshit. I'm not going to go on and on because I explained it in my last podcast. The NBA has been its all-time high. Parity is not good for the NBA. The NBA is not football. It's not baseball. You have star players, and the only way you can have parity in the NBA is if you have a bunch of average teams with a chance to win a championship. Unfortunately, there's a finite amount of players who are really good in the NBA. So if they want to all team up, it's still entertainment. Nobody had a problem with how great the Lakers were every year with the Lakers and Celtics, Lakers, Celtics, Lakers, Celtics. Nobody had a problem with that. Actually, NBA was built on that. So it's just he's speaking for the owners. Always remember, he gets paid by the owners, just like Roger Goodell. Well, by the end of the week, he was singing a different tune. I think it was some people credit Kevin Durant's mother. I guess they had a talk, and she was like, "What are you talking about? Super teams is good. It's good to have super teams. You got a villain team, and now everybody's going to root for LeBron. This is hilarious." More NBA news. Birdman. This guy has got the most coolest name, and he's like the most popular player who's been basically below average NBA shot blocker. Anyway, Birdman signed to the Cavs. I guarantee you that was a lot to do with LeBron. LeBron said, get Birdman, and they got him. Brandon Bass signed to the Clippers. And last but not least, Blake Celtics. Boston Celtics are now trading for Blake Griffin. First they were signing Kevin Durant. I'm saying all this because the Celtics are so funny. They keep, because they, see, what people don't realize, the NBA, the GMs, even though they make a lot of mistakes, a lot of GMs are very smart. And the really good players you want, play for the teams with the smart GMs. And the reason why I say that is because the whole league saw when the Celtics traded a bunch of trash for Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. When Kevin McHale did his friend a favor. Everybody saw that. So now he thought this is the way you build a team again. Just round up all these assets and, trade to a team. But as I said before, and I'll say it again, lottery picks are like lottery tickets. It's really a crapshoot. Even a number one pick. Look at Anthony Bennett. It's not guaranteed. Number 2s, number 3s, not guaranteed. I mean, Kid Gilchrist was a number 2 pick. He's a good defender, but should be a number 2 pick? It's a crapshoot. Curry was number 7 or 6? I don't even remember his number, but he's an MVP of the league 2 times. You never knew that was going to happen. So it's such a crapshoot. The bird in the hand is definitely more than 2 in the bush all the time. So maybe the Celtics will end up making a big trade. We'll see. We will see. And now we're going to get into this segment of the show called What the Fuck You Talking About? I gotta say, this week's candidate of What the Fuck You Talking About is NFL players and some NFL fans for hating on NBA players' salaries. We have Google. The internet, it's awesome. There's Google, there's what's the other Bing? There's so many different ways you can get information nowadays. But yet and still, we get people who are opinionated and stupid. Like, very opinionated, but will not take 30 seconds just to type in what you want to know. Because I keep hearing why are NBA players why the marginal players are getting the salaries of the stars in the NFL. And it's very simple. First simple answer is that it's less people on the roster. 15 players to 53 players. That's one clear one. But the most important aspect of why they only make the marginal players make more as much as the stars is the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. The NFL players are never able to sit out long enough to get this right deal. They have the worst deal. It's the most popular sport, and they have the worst deal of all sports. Basically, that's why guaranteed money is so important in the NBA. And the NFL, And the NFL. That's why players sit out after having great years. Rip up my contract. Because what they have done is the NFL has made the contracts irrelevant. It's your signing bonus. And only way they honor it, this is the funny thing, is they give you a contract and they only honor it if you're playing well. If you get hurt, they can cut you. It'll hurt against their salary cap, I think, for the first year or something like that. But either way, they can cut you in the NFL. So many star players, when they get old, they get cut. But that is negotiated. The NBA will never negotiate a deal like this. Look at the Major League Baseball. And by the way, nobody talks about Major League Baseball when they get $300 million contracts. Nobody ever really says anything. I don't hear anything. I remember when LeBron, I just want to say this is a little different on a side note. When LeBron went to Miami, I remember that same year, I think it was the same, I think that winter, it's the pitcher from Philadelphia. His name escapes me. It was right after Philadelphia won the World Series. Like one of the best pitchers in baseball went to Philadelphia. They never won, by the way, after that. But he went there, and I forgot his name. It's not even important. It was a great pitcher. He went to Philadelphia. Y'all can look it up. That's what Google's for. I just said that. But anyway, back to... And I think that also regular people hate on NBA players. That may have a little bit of a racial component to it. And I know a lot of people hate, talk about race, but I'm not saying racial component as in racism. I mean racial component as in, basically, if you look at these NBA guys, let's just say from a black person's perspective. You're black. A lot of these NBA guys look like guys from around the block. They have the same face. These guys from around the block. And I think some black people have difficulty in seeing these guys that look like guys they see every day getting this kind of money. I really think that they look at them as peers. Basically, they look at these NBA players because they might look like a cousin of theirs. They look at them, and because they're black, they for some reason may think they're on the same kind of level, which is completely ridiculous considering there's only 450 roster spots in the NBA and basically over 100 million people are trying to make the NBA. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then if I look at the any other population, any other race, white, Asian or whatever, I think they look at these guys the same way the black people look at them, but maybe in a more inferior, I hate to say it, but maybe in a more inferior way, like this guy. Now everybody's okay when the stars make the money. Nobody has a problem with the stars. They stars. They're marginal players. But people don't understand something about how hard it is to get to any professional league. Usually the best guy in the state, a lot of times he barely makes the league. A lot of times he's not even the best in his college. I mean, the top college players sometimes don't make it. Think about it. The draft has how many slots? It's 2 rounds in the NBA draft. It's just 2 rounds. With all these players, it's only 2 rounds. In the first round, maybe, and you might get 2 guys from the second round that make it. These guys are really good. So anyway, the NFL players, and then the NFL players are outwardly hating, knowing why y'all in this situation, knowing that you don't plan right. You don't plan for a strike. You play the hardest game. You should get the biggest guaranteed salaries or insurance or something. But every time, like the last time there was a CBA, they caved. So don't blame the NBA. Don't hate on the NBA. Don't hate on the NBA. And fans, don't hate on the NBA. If you like the sport, good. Just watch the games. I don't worry about what they make. And don't tell me nothing about teachers, because nobody ain't paying to see nobody teach unless you're going to college. Other than that, nobody's paying to watch somebody teach. Or 24,000 people are not packing, or 20,000 people are not cheering for a teacher. I'm sorry, it just doesn't go that way. Anyway, that is my what the fuck are you talking about segment. A little different this time. I didn't get a chance. That segment was a little different. Nobody said some off the wall things. I didn't really get that this year. This week. So I just went on that. Now, I'm going to get into my last topic. And it's been a long day. I know this podcast isn't as long, but I've been working. I got a lot of little things going on, and it takes a lot of energy. So I'm here at 6 in the morning recording this podcast for you. And by the way, I've been up all night working. So I just got to say that. I got to throw those excuses in there. Or maybe reasons. Will, or can, or how can Kristaps Porzingis make the All-Star game this year, this upcoming season? Now, this is going to be short, this topic here. What does he need to do to make the All-Star game? First of all, let's look at the players. Let's look at the power forwards and centers. Now, the good thing, I'm glad they took out the positions, because the center position was getting bad, and they would just have to put any big guy in there that was like average to below average, and keep a wing player or a great guard out. So they decided, just the best top 5, and that's it. I can't wait for it to be all guards one year. That'll never happen, but just saying. So Kristaps Porzingis competition is Al Horford, Drummond, and let's say Millsap. Now, Chris Bosh, we don't know if he's going to play in the NBA this year. I hope he does. I hope he regains his form. Like I said, I don't hate on these players. I love the NBA first, then I love the Knicks. And more than that, I like to see the players healthy. I would prefer to see players healthy. I don't want to see guys hurt and have life or death situations that they play in the court. So I wish Chris Bosh the best. So now, if you look at it, Andre Drummond, Al Horford, Millsap. If KP averages, I don't know, he averaged 13 and 13 and 7 last year, and maybe about 1.5 blocks a game. What if he goes up to, from 13, I'm going to keep it modest. I think he's going to be a superstar, seriously. I think he's going to be a franchise player before you know it. But I'm going to keep it very modest. Let's say he adds 3 points. 3 points and 2 rebounds. So that'll make him and another half a block. So if he averages 16 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 blocks, I think he could do better than that. But let's see. If he averages 16 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 blocks, and the Knicks are winning, would he be an all-star this year? Would they get voted in? You see, I think so. He might even start, because the fans are ahead of that. The fans can make that happen. But if he averages 16 points, which is only 3 points more than his average. Actually, I think he averaged 13.9. So if he adds 3 points, he'll be almost at 17. So actually, if I say 17, that's not 4 points. That's 3 point. That's not 4 points. That was that 3.1 point. So let's just say he averages 17 and 9. 17, 9, and 2. I don't think 2 blocks a game is out of the realm of possibility with a 7'3" guy. If he averages 17 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 blocks a game, being a two-way player, he'll be an all-star this game. He'll be an all-star this game, this year. Because if you look at Andre Drummond, I think he's going to average like 15 rebounds. He's a beast. I think Al Horford is an all-star. So Bosh is probably not going to be in the all-star game. So is he going to replace Millsap? Let's see. I mean, Al Horford's stats is right around the same as that. I think he's like 18 and things like that. He's right around the same thing. But Al Horford is an established all-star in this league. So I can see that, and I can see Drummond taking another step because he's going to continue to get better, and his team is going to be good this year. They're going to be decent. So I think he'll make the all-star game. I think if he just goes 17, 9, and 2, that's an all-star. And if the Knicks are winning, and let's say the Knicks are top 4 seed by the time the all-star break comes in, yeah, he'll have a chance to make the all-star game. Actually, if you think about it, if Derrick Rose plays really good, I'm sorry that this topic is about Kristaps Porzingis, but if Derrick Rose has a renaissance, if Derrick Rose averages 17 and plays well, who knows? The Knicks can mess around and have 3 all-stars this year. Melo's going to make it. If Melo's healthy, he's an all-star. But it's very possible. It is really, really possible for that to happen, to have 3 all-stars this year. I'm just saying, because we know Derrick Rose is a star if he's healthy. I'm just saying, I don't want to get ahead of myself with Derrick Rose, but I think KP doesn't have much competition, so I think that he has a very, very good chance of making the all-star team. And then, one thing I want to say is I hear a lot of people say, hold your horses on KP, and he may not. Look, I'm not going to look at Kristaps Porzingis' situation with caution. Like, he might get hurt. Everybody might get hurt. Michael Jordan could have gotten hurt. Or he may not be as good. And he did get hurt, as a matter of fact, Michael Jordan did. Or he may not be as good in his second year. Yes, all of those are possibilities. I'm only giving my opinion. And in my life, and I've been watching basketball for a very long time. Like I said, I've been around since the Bernard King, the animal, what's that, Bannister, what's the name? Ken Bannister, the animal, Pat Cummings, when I was like, Pat Cummings is pretty good. He looked like he could be a star. And the Knicks used to lose all the doggone time. I've been a Knicks fan since Hubie Brown was the coach. So I've been there. So, and I've seen a lot of NBA. And I'm telling you right now, Kristaps Porzingis, if he only was a great defensive player at 7'3", he can still be a superstar just based on his defense. If he was a 3-and-D center, which you've never seen in the NBA, he would still be a superstar. He's 7'3" and agile. He can score from the outside. He can score from the inside. He can dunk. Of course he can dunk. He's 7'3". He's athletic. He can run the floor. Even Brandon Jennings is saying he's doing a Euro step and dunk and finishing at the rim. This is ridiculous. I think the Knicks have one of those guys. And what I mean by that is one of those guys that it's just not fair to the league. That's how it is with LeBron. It's not fair. With LeBron being on any team, it's never been fair. He's 6'8" and plays like a point guard. Well, this guy is 7'3" and plays like a shooting guard. But he still plays big on defensive moments. I seen when he was guarding LeBron James and blocked LeBron James' shot. Now, LeBron James got his, because he's a great player. But this kid and his mindset, y'all bugging. Y'all bugging. See me this time next year. KP, he got it. You silly. You worrying about, like, I'm not worried, because if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So what? I was wrong about Golden State. I thought, hey, they're not going to win. You know, I'll admit that. Even on Twitter, they got back at me. They threw it up there like, look what you put. Yeah, I was wrong. I'm not afraid to say what I feel or say what my opinion is, you know. But, you know, that's it. I'm going to wrap up this Knicks Home Court podcast, brought to you by Greg Armstrong, and the music brought to you by bensound.com. Go there. It's for people who wanted, you know, it's just instrumental. It's pretty good music, you know. And you can check me out on Twitter at Knicks Show. Now, when I say Twitter at Knicks Show, it's Knicks with an S, Show. So it's 2 S's. Or you can follow me at Greg Arm 1918, also on Twitter. Or you could find the video on YouTube under Knicks Home Court. So this has been another Knicks Home Court podcast. Again, with your host Greg Armstrong. I will have another one ready for you next week. Take care. Be safe out there, y'all. Peace.